Welcome everyone, I'm Dr. Carlos and this is the Dr. Carlos channel. But we're going to have a special clip today from Detect the Wolf, our new channel. So let me give you a little bit of background for both channels. Dr. Carlos channel, which you're on right now, is actually heading to a new direction. We're going to be doing three things that are unique now. First thing we're going to do is we're going to cover criminal news. We're going to cover law enforcement news that happens during the week. How many times a week, we're not quite sure yet. Maybe once, maybe twice, 3 times a week. Hopefully, if you like it and you share, we'll increase the amount of time we can dedicate to that. So we'll be looking at things like the 286% increase in robberies in Manhattan and why that's happening. Why is homicide doubling, but other crimes are not? We'll be looking at that. Part 2 is going to be presentations. So we're going to dig deeper into criminology, forensic psychology, in psychology as well. So we'll look at things like different types of serial killers, rapist typologies, the difference between a pedophile and a hebephile. We'll look at things like environmental design and how does that play a role. We'll look at situational awareness things as well. Now that leads me to their third thing, which is going to be analyzing videos to give you tips on situational awareness to make you and your family safer. So 3 things again. First thing, we'll look at the weekly news of what's going on around America in regards to crime and law enforcement. 2, presentations that look deeper. Actually, we're going to have a special presentation on sovereign citizens, one of our most popular videos. You can find that on our channel as well. And then third, of course, but not least, is the situational awareness videos. Now, Detect the Wolf is going to have experts. So we're going to have experts from all different types of fields analyzing movie scenes and video clips. Today, we're going to have a friend of mine who's been in the FBI for 27 years. He was an FBI profiler, Andrew Bringuel. He now runs Behavioral Science Unit LLC.com. You can find him there. And we're going to take a look at a couple of movies. He's going to take us through this famous one, Silence of the Lambs. There's Clarice Starling right there. And we're going to be looking at how the interview went with her and Hannibal Lecter. In addition to that, we're also going to be looking at The Rock, the 1996 movie with Nicolas Cage as the FBI analyst, or not really an agent. And you're going to see the distinction about that in a minute. And then Sean Connery right there, the SAS captain, which is the UK's version of the Special Forces. I want to give you a brief psychoanalysis here of Hannibal Lecter. This is some of the things I will be doing on this channel for the future, so you definitely don't want to miss out on that. So Hannibal Lecter, serial killer, obviously. Psychopath? Possibly, more than likely. He has some of the characteristics, right? He's callous, he's unemotional, he's charming, he's manipulative. These are a lot of the factors that we see with psychopaths. Now, there is a distinction between psychopathy, sociopathy. These are not clinical terms that a psychologist would use because they don't exist in what they call the DSM-5. The DSM-5 is kind of like the Bible for psychologists. It has all the diagnoses of the different disorders. But some of them just don't fit. They're used in nomenclature by the law enforcement. They're used by maybe the media. But they're not classified as a clinical disorder. Psychopathy has a lot to going for it in regards to being a clinical disorder. The closest thing you can see is something called antisocial personality disorder. And the antisocial personality disorder is similar. Everybody who has psychopathy has antisocial personality disorder, but not everybody who has antisocial personality disorder has psychopathy. Again, so Hannibal Lecter, he has a very traumatic childhood. If you've read the books or updates on it or the history of Hannibal Lecter, he had a very traumatic experience watching his sister, I think, who was murdered and then eaten by these individuals. It was during the time of the war. His parents were killed. These are very common things, not those specific ones, but trauma is very common for serial killers. A lot of them have been abused sexually, physically, emotionally, all of the above. And this is not to justify their behavior, it's just to explain it. As we call it, etiology, etiology, where it comes from. What could possibly lead to this? Well, one of the things you have to remember is something called multiple pathways of causation, which means there's more than one factor that contributes to somebody's behavior. It's not simply the traumatic event that created Hannibal Lecter. It's usually a confluence of different things that have happened. Lack of attachment because of his parents dying so young. He didn't have that attachment. Lack of peer support, lack of mentors, just a whole lot of things. But again, psychopaths tend to be callous, unemotional. They have a what they call an underdeveloped prefrontal cortex, either because of environmental toxins, organic issues, prenatal issues, all sorts of things. They tend to have that. In addition to that, they tend to commit a lot of crimes. They tend to work a lot of temporary jobs. They don't last very long in certain relationships. They're very transient. They're also, what they have is low anticipatory function. And low anticipatory function means they don't anticipate consequences very well. So they're reckless and impulsive. Okay, a lot of these things probably sound like a teenager in some cases. And the other key thing is a lot of them have what they call conduct disorder. It's a diagnosis for somebody under 18 who misbehaves and breaks the law. And they're antisocial as well. That's a brief synopsis of Hannibal Lecter. Well, maybe we'll dig deeper. If you're interested, I can dig deeper into Hannibal Lecter. All you have to do is put that in the comments. So without further ado, let's go to my friend here, Andy Bringuel. He's going to be analyzing some of these movie scenes. How about this part right now? So would an FBI agent normally go down a hall of...
I'd suggest that everybody watch Silence of the Lambs. It's a good movie. Won 5 Academy Awards, including Best Picture and Best Actress, Best Actor. From a FBI perspective, in terms of any kind of factual legitimacy, there's not a whole lot. It's a theatrical, depiction of an investigation of a serial killer. In this particular scene, what's not accurate is the interview being conducted in the cell of the subject, in this case, Hannibal Lecter. So Starley would, if she were an interviewer of a serial killer like John Douglas and Ron Ressler, the prison, state, local prison, federal prison would bring the subject to an office. And oftentimes they're shackled. The interviews I've done in prisons, the subject was handcuffed and or shackled, and I sat, Mirandized them, and then began my interview. In this particular case, you have Starley walking down this hallway of this rogue gallery of deviants, catcalling and calling out her name or calling out different descriptors of Starley, but. That is not real. That does not happen. We can also talk a little bit about Starley herself. She's a agent in training at the FBI Academy. And Crawford, who plays the role of a John Douglas from the Behavioral Science Unit, takes a liking to her, sees some promise that Starley may have in terms of behavioral profiling and her grasp of forensic psychology. So he gives her a badge and a gun, which is absurd. It's farcical and it's based on what would appeal to an audience out of Hollywood. If you're an agent in training, you are exactly that. You're an agent in training. You're not an FBI agent at that point. You become an FBI agent once you complete your training and you graduate with your gun and your badge. Having said that, this movie, interestingly enough, was made in 1989 at the FBI Academy. So a lot of the scenes in the movie that depict the academy and the process of new agents training are actually quite accurate. And a little factoid, a buddy of mine, Richard Schott, who was an FBI agent for some 27 plus years, and a godfather of one of my children, and was a first office agent with me in Birmingham, Alabama. Rich was going through training, I think it was in September of '89, as he describes the story, when they were filming this movie at the FBI grounds, and other agents, including Rich, were used as extras. And Rich tells the story of how he was in one of the scenes where Starley's working out at the FBI gym. So interesting movie, but not a whole lot of actual facts in terms of how FBI agents in training will do their work.
You've done a lot of interviewing, so let's see if you what you catch on the few words being exchanged here, if you notice anything.
Sure.
You're one of Jack Crawford's, aren't you?
I am, yes.
May I see your credentials?
Certainly.
Now, would that be something that would happen?
Yeah. So let's stop right there. We'll pause. So a couple things there. One, you are one of Jack Crawford's. And Anthony Hopkins played the role. greatly. Anyway, no, that wouldn't happen because no one's going to really know the unit chief. I mean, our unit chief, our agents are not public figures. And so the idea that a serial killer would know the unit chief of the behavioral science unit and then suggest or correlate the interviewer with this unit chief is again absurd, but plays well for Hollywood. The idea that the subject would ask and the FBI agent, she's not an agent, but at this, she's playing one for the movie, would be deferential and, oh yeah, sure, sir, let me get that's absurd. She would show the credentials when they brought the subject to the interview room. She would introduce herself, show her credentials so that she verifies that she's in fact a federal agent. She would take control of the interview immediately, not allow Hannibal to get the first words in and take control of the interview and then drive the interview, as you'll see in the scene. She will take control, and that's the first point. Second point is, and what you'll see that as actually does happen, she will do her best to build rapport. So the first step in any interview with a subject is to try to build that sense of trust and rapport. So you can go ahead.
Closer, please.
See how deferential she is? This is just not real. Doesn't happen this way. She's almost pensive, afraid of him. FBI agents aren't afraid of the subject. And then they, of course, zero in on his eyes because they're not playing this for accuracy. They're playing this to frighten the audience.
Wait, you're not real FBI, are you?
I'm still in training at the academy.
Jack Crawford sent a trainee to me.
Yes, I'm a student.
Now, is it possible that Jack Crawford was trying to play with Hannibal's mind by sending him a trainee?
No, it's not
the
possible.
sacrificial lamb, of course.
In any real sense, it is simply not possible that would happen. First of all, Jack Crawford wouldn't have the authority to send a recruit out to do an FBI investigation. Just wouldn't happen. However, this is loosely based on in a good docuseries called Mindhunters, which is sort of a dramatization of the beginnings of the behavioral science unit with John Douglas and Ron Ressler. And, the basis of the unit itself was to look at the evil minds of these serial killers. So they, in fact, that part is factual. They did go out to prisons and talk to serial killers to get an idea of what you and I have talked about in the past, the why question, motive, why they committed these heinous crimes.
See what happens here. We'll take another couple of minutes and look.
Learn from you. Maybe you can decide for yourself whether or not I'm qualified enough to do that.
That is rather slippery of you, agents, darling. Sit, please. Now then, tell me, what did Miggs say to you? Multiple Miggs in the next cell. He hissed at you. What did he say?
He said, I can smell your cunt.
I see. I myself cannot.
Well, he might have COVID, so that might be the issue. But aside from that, I find it humorous that she would be so forthright with Hannibal Lecter about this other person's comment. But one of the reasons why in the real world you wouldn't have a female agent A alone, that's another bit of misinformation on the scene, is you would not have one agent by themselves doing this type of interview. But aside from that, the reason they wouldn't just walk her down the hallway with these, various deviant criminals is for, to be subjected to that kind of comment. So these are, you're in prison, and in prison, there needs to be predictability of behavior with very little trust of the prisoners. So if you have low trust, Carlos, what do you have? You have high controls. So prisons are one of the environments where you have the highest levels of control in terms of behavior. And so the prison warden and the guards will bring the subject to the agent from the get-go. There is no question who has control of that environment, and that's the FBI agent. They would never put Starlee in a position like this. But again, for the movie and for playing off the scene, this is Starlee who's a recruit, and she's pensive and afraid, and we're the audience kind of seeing Hannibal through her eyes, and that's what they wanted to create, was this character of immense fear and unpredictability in terms of Hannibal, and they did a good job in that.
I'm an agent with the federal FBI. I'm Stanley Goodspeed.
But of course,
All right, stop here.
at least he got his name right.
All right, this is an interesting scene that you chose, Carlos, because in contrast to the Starlee scene at the Silence of the Lambs, they actually brought the subject to an interview room, and he is shackled. He's got handcuffs on. So that part is fairly accurate. But this Goodspeed, the interviewer, who stumbles across his introduction, does not present his credentials as he would in real life, number one. Number two, he's an analyst from a headquarters unit, presumably, out of Washington, here on the Rock in Alcatraz in California, conducting the interview. Not to say that you wouldn't have an analyst as part of an interview team. That has happened. I've actually done that and brought an analyst with me on interview. But you would not have the analyst do the interview without the agent. The agent would conduct the interview. So that's again, a dramatization from Hollywood.
Of course I am.
And you have an emergency.
That's right.
And you need my help.
Exactly right.
Coffee.
No, I'm fine, thank you.
Offer me coffee.
Stop here.
That'd be my next.
So again, for the muse of the audience, they make the agent kind of, or in this case, the analyst kind of dumb and not in tune is what's happening. The subject wants coffee. They would not offer coffee, generally speaking. Depends on the subject and how dangerous. This guy seems to be, a highly dangerous subject. So I hardly think they would give coffee even as a sign of good faith. In other cases, I have offered drinks as a way to build rapport. Bringing the chair closer to the subject, yeah, that's done to kind of close that space and again build that rapport. So that part fairly accurate.
If I remember correctly, Sean Connery is playing a former special ops guy from Britain. I think he was something like that.
Yeah, if you have that kind of skill set and you can literally kill with a quarter, so to speak, you're not going to close that space. You're going to keep that guard in the room the whole interview. You're going to have him shackled. You're not going to let him out of the wrist braces. You're not going to give him coffee or anything hot, certainly. You may give him some water or Coke. But yeah, again, it's for Hollywood.
We got a cup of coffee in here, please.
Take these off.
Mr. Mason, really.
As a gesture of your good faith.
Prisoner requests to have his handcuffs taken off. Why don't you go ahead and have his handcuffs taken off, please?
Well, I guess that's one way to go.
This is a pardon and release contract from the Attorney General's office. Now, it makes you a free man.
Okay. You stop that.
What?
I've never heard of the Attorney General offering a contract. There are proffer agreements that are offered from the United States Attorney's Office to subjects through their defense attorneys. In this case, they're dealing directly with the subject. Not likely, but yeah, again, for theatrical purpose.
Cooperate. So if you'll just sign where it says
Signature.
That's yes, signature.
Temiodaneus et dona forentus.
I fear the Greeks, even when they bring gifts.
An educated man. That rules out the possibility of you being a field agent.
Now you can stop there.
When in fact I am.
How did I know?
Well, I mean, obviously, that's the most accurate part of this scene, right? If he has intelligence, he can't be an FBI agent. Yeah, of course, I'm joking. Again, it's to keep it a bit light, I think, and keep the pace of the scene going.
A field agent, Mr. Mason.
Really?
Yes,
In which field?
anti-terrorism.
Then you're trained in weaponry, explosives, and mortal combat.
Well trained.
Then it's the Fairmont Hotel.
Okay.
I want a suite, a shower, shave, and the feel of a suit.
May I also suggest a haircut?
Am I out of style?
Unless you're a 20-year-old guitarist from Seattle. It's a grunge thing.
Grunge.
Yeah, well, okay. Thank you very much.
All right.
All right, you can stop here.
Close the floor if necessary.
So, okay, Boomer, he has to explain what grunge is. That's pretty humorous to me. But the other parts, are fairly accurate. I mean, I've personally negotiated with a subject, but all of that has to be brought back to the United States Attorney. The United States Attorney makes the negotiations happen, right, with the defense attorneys in terms of proffers. So, in terms of Bureau of Prisons, and I forget if this is, if it's Alcatraz, it's, I believe, state prison. But in any case, a federal state prison, the warden will determine, any kind of benefits that the person gets in the prison. The FBI has very limited authorities in that case. We can make requests, and that's about it.
I think the prison was already closed when this happened. The Rock was
Oh.
closed. He
Okay.
was, they had taken it over hostage.
Right.
So some military guys, special ops, I think were frustrated with the government. They took hostages over at the Rock, Alcatraz. And the only guy who's ever been able to get in was Sean Connery. And
I gotcha.
That's why they brought him back.
So I guess
out
the
of,
similarity to the Silence of the Lambs, where they used Hannibal Lecter as a quasi-consultant, they're using Sean Connery as a quasi. So that's a good. You're a smart man. So you're comparing the two. So that's good. It's been a long, long time since I've seen this movie. I need to go back. Maybe it's on Netflix. But
I did
yeah,
want to show
okay,
you that
excellent.
one scene too, because you kind of alluded to something earlier. Let me see if I can get to it. Right here. Let's see. You kind of said something here.
Great job, good speed. Why don't you throw in a triple D, you rat?
I'll deliver this to the Attorney General.
No, you'll give it to me. Give it to me, Reynolds, and take Attorney Reynolds outside. There's a car waiting for you. Thank you.
That's a signed federal document, sir. Isn't that illegal?
You're not acquainted with the full facts, good speed.
With all due respect, sir, I'd like clarification. I gave that man my word.
Damn it. You're on a need-to-know basis, and you
Yeah,
don't...
stop right there. All right, a couple quick things, and then we're going to end it on this last piece, which is brilliant. But first of all, I could have retired early every time I heard "need to know." So that part is actually factual, but not in context of this scene. And the Bureau does compartmentalize intelligence for need to know. So agents working a specific investigation have a need to know and are read into that intelligence. Other agents may not have any idea. There's a number of reasons for that. Loose lips, sink ships, that's one. But it's also to minimize any potential corruption that may happen with this valuable commodity known as intelligence. That's first thing. Second thing, you don't tear up a proffer once it's given and signed. But again, this wouldn't have happened in real life anyway, more for drama. And as I mentioned earlier, they don't come from the Attorney General. They come from the United States Attorney's Office in the various districts that we have around the country.
It's kind of curious, but Sir Walter Raleigh, Alcemanis, Solzhenitsyn, they were all wrongfully imprisoned.
Womack, why am I not surprised, you piece of shit?
So perhaps, and we ended on this fittingly, perhaps the funniest part of the scene is that he must have he found a diamond edged quarter that could cut through glass. And then, he recognizes this rogue FBI guy, Womack, you piece of shit. So only Sean Connery could pull that off with the flowing gray hair, But yeah, that would, it just doesn't happen in the real world. They would have cleaned the room. He found a quarter, a presumably good speed drop quarter. Then he sharpened it all in less than a minute to, sharp enough edge to cut glass, and then, used his elbow to punch through. Probably not likely. In fact, nearly, I would guess, impossible. But again, for Hollywood, you're going to go out and watch this movie. You don't want to see just some boring FBI investigation. You want to see crazed Sean Connery, who eventually is going to help the FBI save the day. I don't want to give too much away from the movie, but yeah, that's my take on this scene.
Welcome everyone. Hopefully you enjoyed that analysis with Andrew Bringuel. Again, he's the founder of Behavioral Science Unit LLC, so I highly recommend you go check that out, behavioralscienceuntllc.com. We thank you so much for your support. And again, if there are any movie scenes that you want us to look at, I can find experts that can look at it. We can psychoanalyze it. We got a lot of guests coming up in the next upcoming weeks to talk about snipers, to talk about situational awareness, body language, you name it. I'm really excited. I can't wait, and I hope you can't either. Thanks again, everyone. We'll catch you next time.